watching WBBZ-TV, your hometown Me TV station, Springville, Buffalo.
Welcome to Daily Buzz 716. I'm Mercedes Wilson, and I'm joined by these lovely ladies today. Today on the show, let's talk about something that virtually anyone you know has an opinion on: how men and women coming out of our prisons should be approached and accepted back into our communities. We'll have Executive Director Cindy McGackin from Peaceprints with us later on in the show to give us an inside look into that world. Peaceprints of Western New York is a nonprofit organization offering comprehensive reentry services to the men involved in the criminal justice system. The reentry and housing programs are designed to offer provisions and guidance along each step of an individual's transformation. Whew, with all of that being said, ladies, let's start with some hot topics. What do we want to talk about?
I don't think there's anything we can talk about but the terror attack in London.
Yeah.
It's, and you know, in today's news, the headline is, depraved attack leaves 5 dead. There's 6 dead now, 40 hurt in London. And the dead, I'm just looking at my New York Times app, the casualties include 12 Britons, at least 4 South Koreans, 3 French children who were apparently there on a field trip going to Parliament, 2 Romanians, 2 Greeks, and citizens of several other countries. I mean, this is the prime tourist area of London that is, and people walking on a sidewalk in broad daylight. That's very,
that's the point of terrorism, isn't it? I mean, if there is no point. It's just murderers. It's just people who are deranged or claiming they have some reason for doing it, but actually they're just they should be just called murderers. But the point is, when we say terrorism, it's terrorism. It's to make people law-abiding, ordinary tourists, citizens, normal people afraid. And that is what it's doing. So that is what they're succeeding in doing by all of these, you know, going to like the Arc de Triomphe, or no, it was the Eiffel Tower. I'm sorry.
In Nice, the worst one was in Nice, and Bastille Day in Nice.
You know, where people are just enjoying themselves, living their lives, and so to make people
mow them down with a car,
people afraid, instill fear.
And you know, apparently, according to Bloomberg, this attack was actually investigated over a year ago.
He was on authorities' radar. The attacker was. He was born in Britain, but he's of Arabic descent. I don't know which country, Syrian, I believe. But he was on their radar. Now there's, of course, it's a lone wolf attack. How can you protect yourself from that? Well, number one, a lone wolf is not a lone wolf. There's a pack of wolves. Nobody gave him the money to rent the car, and they're making arrests in Birmingham, England.
There's been 8 arrests.
8 arrests in Birmingham. So this is not lone wolf. And I mean, we had something like that not that far from here a few years ago in Lackawanna, the so-called Lackawanna 6, right? And,
well, we didn't have it. Thank God we didn't have an attack.
No. But I mean, it was people who were training to be. They were convicted. They were training to be.
And the problem is when they said he was on their radar, let's say, or they knew his name. This happened previously in one of the other attacks too, where they said, and I can't remember where it was, where they knew the person, they knew the terrorist, or they had looked into him and let him go.
I think it was the Paris, wasn't it? The Paris with the bottle bomb.
So the problem is in London, in France, in our country as well, how are we going to balance the issue of, you know, rights and freedom and a probable cause and legal rights, as opposed to the fear that somebody is going to be, you know, radicalized and whatever they're going to do. And the question is, could they have kept this person in custody? Could they have, he was born in London, so they couldn't have sent him back to wherever he was being radicalized. Whether they could have kept him in jail, kept him in custody, kept him away for some reason, or followed him, or checked. They can't, obviously, law enforcement, they can't be everywhere at all times, can they? So I guess that everyone is saying, well, why did they let him go? Why weren't they following him? Why wasn't he in custody? Why wasn't he? Well, because if they kept him in custody, people would then be saying, oh, you have no proof. You have no proof. Why, you know, you're just
Well, is it possible, Judge, and I'm sure you can kind of answer this for us, when we do have these kind of people, we're watching them and we're not necessarily trying to violate their rights, but is there a possibility to really keep an eye on them on a regular?
See, everyone
Legally.
says that.
Yeah, legally, right.
Everyone says that. Yes, I mean, they could keep an eye on, but the
how many of
question
them
is,
are there and how many
That's
police?
exactly
Right.
right,
Yeah.
Mary. I mean, they can't be everywhere at
Now,
all times.
the
That's the
Lackawanna
problem.
6, that was a federal.
Yes, it
Right,
was.
so you
Right.
weren't involved in any way
No,
in
no,
that.
but-
I'm sure you're aware of the surveillance that was done of them, because judges talk, right? You know the judicial. I mean,
Yeah. But
were there any issues of fairness
They
with the?
were, yeah. I mean, once they were charged, when
The
they
defense
were
attorneys
charged,
came up with
they
that, right?
were, you know, what's the probable cause to think that they were involved with this, and what's the proof, and what were the witnesses, and whatever. But even to get a surveillance, even for a warrant, let's say, you have to have some kind of probable cause. You have to go to a court. Like I have signed, you know, many warrants for people where they were trying to look at their phone, let's say, their
Yeah,
cell
right.
phone, their emails, that kind of thing. And you have to go to a court, and you have to, the people who want to, the law enforcement people or the investigators have to show some probable cause, to use a term.
What was it in that
some
case? Do
reason.
you remember? Or
No, because
was it cell phones, or
there
did they
was-
have an informant? Or
They had both. They did both. But the thing is that, you know, what we're saying is we want to fault law enforcement, like in London. Everyone's saying, well, why was this person? They knew he was on the radar. They knew he was radicalized. They knew this. Why didn't they arrest him? Why didn't they? Because if they arrested him, just like Mercedes just said, then everyone would say, oh, you're violating his rights. You shouldn't. Yeah, so
Plus,
it's
somebody else in
it's
the
a
wolf pack
delicate,
might have done the
it's a
attack,
delicate
right?
balance, and it's very hard. It's a fine line, and it's very hard to know where to draw it and what to do. But whether to err on the side of the safety of the community and the safety of citizens, and say, okay, this person possibly could do something. Let's put him away. Let's keep him in custody. Let's
we can't do that
keep
in
him
our system.
Well, we can we?
And we
I
don't
don't
want
think
to.
they can do that
But
in
we
London
want to do
either.
something.
And
We have to do something.
you know, the mayor of London, who is, I don't know if he was born, but he's of Arabic descent, the current mayor of Khan, I think is his name. And he said, not after this, I'm sure he would not say this now, but again, after some previous, I don't remember whether it was Berlin or Nice or whatever, he said, well, you know, that's life in the big city. We just have to get used to these kinds of things. And I'm
I
sorry.
don't think anybody.
Who wants to get used to that?
Anybody would agree with
I
that.
don't think we have to. There's got to be a
No.
way. We've got to do
And
something.
speaking of the big city, we talked about it a little bit earlier. How does that affect, you know, locally? We talked
How
about
we
some
even
previous
operate,
attacks and
yeah.
how we should protect ourselves and how, you know, things that we
Well,
can.
I mean, the
Well,
Niagara
we-
power grid supplies the East Coast with electricity. I mean, that's a big target right in our backyard.
Yes, it is.
When we talk to, which maybe on another program we will, somebody from the FBI here or from the U.S. Attorney's Office or from ICE, you know, all of that, they always say that the reason that we are so concerned about, you think, oh, who would care about little old Buffalo or little Western New York? I mean, it's not on anybody's radar, but it is because of what you were talking about, and because we're so close to the border. The Canadian border, and I think we were talking before, the terrorists in 9/11 and some other incidents came over from Canada. So we are very vulnerable here, and we are.
And I'm sorry, do we think Canada is as proactive as the U.S. airports are? I don't know. Is
No,
it?
a lot of people feel that
I've flown out of
that
Toronto.
there is
and I
not
don't-
the security
it would be.
that they need. There's been a lot of meetings, and there's been a lot said and written about the fact that the Canadian security is not as good as ours, as far as, you know, entering the country, as far as entering our country from Canada. That there've been a lot of improvements in the last couple of years.
A few years ago, our family flew to Poland, and so we flew. I don't remember if we went to Newark or Chicago, but we flew into Warsaw.
Oh, no, you're good.
Okay.
Actually, hold that thought. We'll be right back.
Okay.
We're going to take a short break, but our thoughts and our prayers go out to everyone in London this morning, and we'll be right back with some more Hot Topics. Welcome back to the Daily Buzz 716. Right before the break, Mary wanted to go into a point, and we absolutely want to hear that. So Mary,
Right. Well, we flew into Warsaw, and now that's probably not the most secure of airports in the world, but I will tell you, all circulating among all the people going through customs were soldiers, combat gear, holding this thing, the machine gun, whatever, balaclava, the ski mask thing over their face, and my kids loved it. They go, "Wow, it's like being in a movie," But I'm saying they were looking at it, and with the dogs and everything else, they were all over the place. And I'm just saying, other people have good security. Maybe we need better. I don't know. But I mean, this guy was born in London, and we don't know all the answers here, obviously.
Right.
So.
Well, again, our hearts, our prayers and our thoughts go out to everyone in London. We're going to switch gears a little bit to
where we're going.
Yeah, we're going to switch gears a little bit. Ladies, I have a question. In today's society, in your opinion, is it harder to be married or is it harder to be single?
As soon as she said switch gears, I knew this question was about to and her facial expression
Something
shifted
totally
off.
crazy.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know. I've been married since I could walk.
Oh.
No,
Okay.
You were married off, huh?
That new 14-year marriage law might apply to you then.
Did we talk about that? Yeah, can you believe that? That you could be married at the age of 14.
Oh,
you
my
can be
God.
now unless they pass a new law in New York.
I never knew that was a law until they started saying
We need to change it.
We need to change the law.
Oh my gosh.
14, but I do know that there is part of the law where at a certain age you did need a judge's consent to get married, as well as. But on the other hand, is it? You know what? I'm so security conscious in my whole life that I think it's really hard now to date, to be single because of all of the internet. Because everybody seems to be dating and meeting people
that they have no idea
internet.
what their background is.
Yeah.
And you keep hearing story after story about somebody pretending to be
catfishing.
Catfish.
Is that what it's called?
What
Yes.
is catfishing? Okay, I didn't know that term.
Now, I did meet my husband online.
You did, and I've married. I've performed weddings for people who have met online. So,
But it's scary.
But it is, isn't it?
Yeah, it's scary.
What is catfishing?
So catfishing is when someone acts as if they are somebody else online that they're not.
Like unmarried if they're married, or
that, or a completely
man,
a man,
if they're a woman,
or you look
age-wise,
completely different
or
in age.
age-wise, pretending to be like younger or
Yep,
older.
and carrying on relationship, conversation, visits. It's really intense. I'm gonna teach you to the show.
So Adriana, is it harder to be married or is it harder?
I honestly think it's both because Judge, she brought up something really, really important: social media, and so social media plays a factor in both
my
areas.
God,
There are some married people who do not post that they are married on social media. There are some couples who people who are single and they will prey on married people. So it's really it's tough on both ends because you really don't know what you're getting, who you're dealing with, and then you don't know who the person you're dealing with.
But everything you're talking about has to do with social media. Was it safer back in the day when you dated your brother's friend, or your mother, set you
because
up
your
with
brother
her
kept him in
friend's
check.
son, right?
Because somebody introduced you to somebody, or you
Well,
had
you
a
knew their
blind
family,
date.
you knew where they came. Even a blind date, at least he's a friend of your friend's boyfriend.
And you
whatever.
check,
You can check him out, and you can still do that. But it's just everybody now is so reliant on the social media.
Accessible. That's what it is.
Well, and they're not doing
Accessibility.
anything socially that doesn't have to do with this.
Exactly.
They're
and even when you're at dinner, everybody's like this. So you're not really getting the one-on-one communication.
I saw some
and
posts.
the interaction.
You know how you see these posts that are like, I don't know if it was a viral one or if it was one of my friends, I forget.
Right.
But this young woman posted a picture and she said, my mother just took a selfie and it said dinner with Jane and her phone. And she said, I am now putting my phone away for good in restaurants. So.
See, everybody's sitting in
So social media plays a big part. And people, I'm sorry, go ahead. Go
I
ahead.
had the quintessential, iconic, famous, well-known case myself years ago. Everyone knows it was in the media, and they made a Lifetime story about it, on TV, where these people, this man was dating on the internet this woman, and it turned out, and he was madly in love with her, and it turned out, through the internet, they had never met, it turned out that a mother was using her daughter's
that was
picture.
here. That's a local case. The Yonbray case. Right in Clarence, in our backyard.
Yes, and so the mother didn't, the daughter didn't know it, that she was being used, and the man here was madly in love with this girl who didn't know anything about it, and so was somebody else.
A co-worker of the older guy.
He was also communicating with this mother who was pretending to be the daughter. And it turned out they were working together, and it turned out a horrible result was that they knew each other, but they didn't know they were both dating this fake person.
Until the old guy found out.
And then one found out, and he actually sniper attacked and murdered the young girl.
That was right here.
Well, that's called catfishing.
Yeah.
When you're acting like someone that you're not.
Was the mother ever convicted of anything, Judge Penny?
No, the mother was
Don't
not.
you think
So that's
she
not
was
even
in some
against
way
the law, is it,
culpable?
Judge?
Right. It's so funny you should say that. People kept saying, wasn't she to blame and wasn't it her fault? But not legally. Not legally.
Wow.
And that.
She didn't force a guy to get out a gun.
Exactly. And she didn't force them to communicate and fall in love and, have a relationship.
But I think, just to even go back to the question, I think, in this climate, in this day and age, dating has shifted, like you said, back in the day. And I just feel it's on both ends, because you have to deal with another person at the end of the day. It's supposed to build as a friendship, hopefully morph into a relationship, and then eventually marriage. But it's really difficult, I would say, courting.
Courting isn't the same as what it is.
It's not the same.
It's not.
And so some people jump into marriages and never building a friendship.
Yeah.
So does that mean that married life is harder or single life is harder?
I think it's
even.
I think it's
really,
even.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because sometimes as a married person, you want to be single. And sometimes as a single person, you want to be married. Because sometimes,
it's not just that, though. It's also when you're a married person, you've got somebody else.
You have responsibility.
You've got responsibility. But more than that, for instance, if you have children, somebody else is, you're not the Ayatollah of the kids' lives, bad term. But I mean,
You're not kidding.
But you know what, I mean, and you might not have exactly the same philosophy of that as that
Same
person.
Yeah.
For instance, should they have spinach for dinner 3 nights a week or no?
Yeah.
Maybe they
You
should.
have to work at
Well, this
being
was
happily
good.
married.
Yes, it's
have to
work
work.
on the daily.
So it's both.
It's both. We would say
Okay.
it's all work.
Well, that's
So we don't know the answer.
All work and
I guess
play.
the question is answered. Coming up after the break, we'll be joined by Cindy McGacken of Peaceprints to talk about all of the wonderful things that are happening in our community, thanks to all of her hard work. So stay with us. Welcome back to the Daily Buzz 716. We want to welcome Cindy McGacken, who is doing the incredible, important work of helping ex-offenders reintegrate into society with the Peaceprints organization. With this being Women's History Month, it is an honor to speak with a woman making history. Cindy, welcome.
Thank you.
And we won't start by asking you if it's easier to be single or married, because you're engaged, so we'll leave you out of that.
It's a loaded
right?
question.
Yeah, we're doing some tests
You guys
before.
handled that very well.
So we'll start with, tell us about you.
About me personally?
Yes,
or,
yeah. Give us a little
all
history on
right,
Cindy.
All right, so I am currently the executive director for Peaceprints Western New York, but prior to that, I was the reentry coordinator for Erie County for about a year, and then I worked for the Center for Employment Opportunities, helping folks obtain employment who are coming out of state facilities. So have about a decade experience working with this population. Prior to that, I worked with folks with disabilities for about 10 years as well. I have my master's in business from Medaille, and my Are you Medaille also?
Yes.
Oh, perfect. Yes, master's from Medaille, and my bachelor's from UB in social sciences, and I have 2 amazing daughters, and I will be married very soon. So it's pretty exciting.
Okay. So how did you end up with Peaceprints?
It was kind of fluky. Actually, the executive director was leaving, and it was kind of a short notice, and I got a phone call out of the blue one day and said, hey,
We want you here.
I'm leaving, and we think you'd be great.
Can you go back? Oh, I'm sorry. Can
No,
we
go
go
ahead.
back and ask you what is Peaceprints? Because I'm sure our viewers may not be familiar with it.
Absolutely, absolutely. So Peaceprints is a grassroots reentry organization. So we work with men and women and their families formerly incarcerated, both inside the facilities as well as in the community. We're most known for Bissonnet House, and our founder was Sister Karen. So that tends to tie people back to who we are and help identify us.
Well, the Sister Karen is an interesting aspect.
Absolutely.
And possibly, again, our viewers may not be familiar with that story, which I think is crucial.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you're the one that's going to tell us.
Fabulous. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
I love it. I love it.
Back in mid to late 80s, Sister Karen founded Hope House, and it stood for Home of Positive Experience. And she really pioneered this idea of reentry. Mass incarceration is a huge issue that plagues our nation. We have folks coming back into the community, and literally reentry is just re-entering out of incarceration back to our community. She understood this early on, and so she opened a home for men who are returning from state facilities, and very, very early, before this was really being done, men were coming back. She would kind of handpick who it was, got to know them inside.
So it's what we would call a halfway house?
Yes, she referred to it as a transitional house, but yes, same concept. The difference in her model is that she lived in the house. She was the life and breath of the organization, of the house, and very close with everybody who was associated with it. This went for, 15, almost 20 years. The house moved to Grider Street, where it's currently located, was renamed Bissonnet House, where it currently stands today. And Sister Karen was tragically murdered, actually, by one of the men in the house. And that was 10 years ago. Last April, so 11 years ago actually, because we're almost in April again.
Wow.
So 11 years ago. That was just a tragedy that's unspeakable. Yes, and it still is today. It resonates with us today to our core, and it did cause us to take a big step back and maybe kind of change the way we were approaching this whole idea and the partnerships with different stakeholders in the community and what that looks like today.
Right, and that's my community and within the Grider area, and so we would see the Peaceprints everywhere. And when we lost her, it was a tragic loss to the community as a whole. But as we look at you share with us your history of working, who else could have done follow up and fill her shoes in such a way and tried to at least, but what made you even want to? Because you have to be very passionate to work with such a group. You have to have a true understanding, a desire to want to connect with them. What made you want to go into this field?
That's an interesting question, and I thank you for asking that, actually. When I went into the field, it was unexpected. I didn't even know it existed. I was just looking for a change. I was kind of burnt out from the industry that I was in, and I wanted to move onto something else. I found an ad, I applied, I went to an interview, and when they told me about who I would be working with a little more in-depthly, I was kind of shocked. It was that, wait, what?
Right.
Who? And immediately it was, I guess I had that as seen on TV mentality, and that's where I went to, is I drew from all of that and thought, wow, this is kind of cool. This is fascinating. This is very interesting. So I jumped into it, really not knowing a lot. Very quickly, I realized that it's not glamorous by any means, and that it's actually a large systemic issue, and that there are some deep-rooted causes and pieces, and it is much more than I guess I ever anticipated. And through that, my passion kind of blossomed and flourished, and here I am today.
We love it.
It had to be a big setback for the entire project when the person who was the founder and the life was, and I think it had to be, and I'm asking you, really difficult to overcome that in the public's eye, that this whole thing should continue, that the whole project should continue.
we're a grassroots effort still, you know, this far in advance, but and over so much time. But she was grassroots then, and anybody who's ever had grassroots nonprofit knows that oftentimes your board is a board of peers. It's not necessarily folks that maybe understand in its root, but they believe in you, right?
Yeah.
And so they stay with it. And unfortunately, when the tragedy happened and it was so unexpected, we struggled on multiple levels, right? We were shocked and rocked to our core. But then there was the business aspect of it.
Right.
On the, you know, the same token.
You had said that Sister Karen vetted who she would let into the house, who she could help.
Did that change?
Did you vet them? I mean, how did?
I feel like it might have
Clearly, it
heightened.
didn't work. The vetting didn't work in her
Well,
case.
you can't predict anything. There's nothing in life is predictable in any way, shape, or form. And so what we've done is changed our model. We've adopted a model. The organization has evolved over the years, and we work very closely with Pearl as well as local law enforcement to ensure that we are managing the safety of the residents and the staff that are in
And
the
the
facility.
community around them.
Absolutely,
Wow.
absolutely.
Good
Are
Lord.
there certain criteria that you use for determining? I guess there are. Who's going to be chosen, and who's going to live there? I think we have to take a break, but when we come back, I think we'd all
Thank
be
you, Judge
interested
Penny.
in knowing that. You're welcome.
Like she said, we have to take a break, and we will get that question answered as soon as we come back, so stay with us. Welcome back to the Daily Buzz 716, and we are continuing our conversation with Cindy McGackin from Peaceprints. And right before the break, the judge had a question for Cindy.
The guidelines, I think we were all interested in knowing how you determine who is going to be eligible or who can come and stay in the home.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we have multiple phases of housing, but BizNet is the most well-known. And so to answer your question for that particular housing, we work in conjunction with Pearl. So a direct referral from Pearl has to come to us, and we determine whether or not the person would be a good fit between both entities. And then there's constant, continuous communication between both entities to ensure that the person is progressing
What are
appropriately.
the things you look at to see if they'd be a good fit?
Well, oftentimes it's how long they were incarcerated, what is the offense that they were convicted of. There are 2 offenses that are not eligible for services within our organization, and those are sex offenders and arson charges. And that is not necessarily because we don't want to take them, but because of liability reasons and geographic constraints that we have. So we have to vet that out. Sometimes we have repeat offenders, if you will,
That you do not let in.
that we may not let back if it was a very negative situation the last time they were with us. We may not let them come back again, depending on what the story is.
And Cindy does something that I consider to be bold. You don't look at all the details of what the men did before
Often I
they
don't.
came in. That's bold.
amazing.
That's bold.
Because everybody's looking at them
What's your
like that.
reason for that?
So when I was in the disability realm, when I started in that field, you just defined a person however you chose, right? And then over that 10-year progression, I watched this movement occur where it became a person first. And it was so ingrained in my brain that now if I see somebody or hear somebody refer the wrong way, it bothers me. I mean, I still pick up
To a
on
disability?
it. Yes, and it's the person first, right? You define the person, then you can talk about the disability. I see that person first, and I think that everybody deserves that opportunity for me to see them clean, without any issues.
So you do know what their offense was,
absolutely.
but you don't
I'm
know
privy to the information, but I, truth be told,
details of it.
often don't let it sit in my mind for an extended period of time because there's no purpose. It's happened, and I mean, I see folks sometimes that I have a gentleman right now who's 78, and I don't necessarily see him reoffending. He requires, substantial supports, and I don't need to define him by
What
his
he did
conviction.
30 years ago or
Right.
whenever it
I
was.
see this gentleman today.
And so with you having that type of mindset, which is good because then it helps that person actually morph in who they are to become versus staying who, you know, what they were and who they was. Can we talk about the process of allowing that person to get back into the system of being out of the system?
What do you do?
Yeah, so we do a couple different things. We have support groups that operate inside the facility. So we have 9 groups weekly in 7 facilities, and we have an incredible team of volunteers who go in on a weekly basis and meet with all different folks. So they're in max facilities and medium facilities, seeing folks with all ranges of time that they will be in there, and they get to know individuals, work through some of the concerns and issues that they're carrying with them.
Are you talking about groups
inside
like
the prison walls?
Alcoholics Anonymous? Or
No, our groups, it's CFIS is what it's called, the CFIS groups, and it's been around for about 40 years. And this is just a team of diehard volunteers that go in and sit, 1 or 2 of them at a time, with a group of about 10 or so men and women. We go into both facilities and talk with them. You know, it's kind of just a community
counseling?
coming in. Yes. I should use that
kind of like
loosely.
wraparound, we would say.
I don't want to call it wraparound.
Okay.
It's support, but it's
not
outside
counseling because
community
they're
support.
not psychological professionals,
Yes.
is that right?
Yes,
Okay.
and the difference is that you're talking community. So you have folks, when you're incarcerated, you are in a whole nother world, right? You are in a different
Community of bad people.
There you go.
Well.
And there's people paid to be around you. These are volunteers that are going in, and they are just talking through life with the guys. But the difference is that it's an outside voice. It's an outside entity coming in. And that seems to be very impactful. And these arose from the Attica uprisings. It was in direct relation to that. CFIS was an organization to itself at one point, and at that point they were approached and they were asked to go in and lead these groups for that very reason, to bring community inside the facility.
So you mentioned community. What are some of the who are some of the community organizations that are willingly allowing these, you know, individuals coming in with the soft skills, you know, after having such services being rendered, you know, being working with you guys, that are allowing them to have opportunities to work again? Because a lot of times when these gentlemen or even ladies are released from prison, having any kind of history, a lot of time they're not able to get working, you know, a work opportunity, being able to have employment. Then they kind of resort back to going back into the things that they were once doing. So, you know, what are some of the organizations, or who are some of the, you know, opportunities that are out there for them?
So to finish, hold on, the first question, excuse me, I'm going to add, because it will segue into that.
Great.
I go into the facilities now and I lead workshops to phase 3 individuals getting released all over the state. It was a pilot to start. I go into 3 facilities right now. Hopefully we'll be expanding that more. But I give them a crash course in what to expect when you get out.
Such as?
All of the barriers. So we talk about what it's going to be like to sit on the bus and potentially be next to a female who's sitting on the bus next to you, and all of a sudden it's uncomfortable and awkward. What you're going to expect the first time you report to parole. If you have approved housing, what to expect, that process of walking you through what to expect when you're there. To enrolling in school, enrolling in social services, any entitlement benefits.
Depending on how
finding
long
a job.
they've been in, they may not even know about cell phones and social media.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we talk about advocates in the community and where you find them and how you vet them to make sure that they also have your best interests in mind. And I have 2 hours with the group when I go in, and I see anywhere from 25 to 50 individuals over the course of a day being released again all over the state. Small cohort of that, or subset, will be coming then to us and our services. So what we do when they come in is we provide a warm welcome to start with. We based our new program model off of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and so if we can't meet your immediate need, we're not going to be able to talk about big picture, and we know that. So coming in, we're going to upfront all of those things to you: clothing, food. We give you hygiene items, your bedding. It's all brand new stuff for you. Okay, so we're taking away that element, and now we can peel back and we can talk a little more about larger goals, which would be employment, stable housing, education. Those types of goals. Sometimes it's family reunification, depending on the person and the story. And as far as employment, then we have a plethora of community-based organizations that we then will refer out to and we will work with. And so that's what we will do. We will also assist inside as well. We have staff that will, you know, offer that assistance.
You do so many great things.
Amazing.
We have to take a break. I don't want to stop you, but we have to take a break.
because Judge Penny said so. So we'll be right back with Cindy right after this. Welcome back to Daily Buzz 716. Cindy's still here. She hasn't run off.
No, we didn't scare her away.
We haven't let her leave.
No. So we have a couple more questions for you.
I would like to ask a question of Cindy, and I realize this does not refer to Peaceprints because you don't accept sex offenders. And there was a heinous case in Buffalo not too long ago of a convicted sex offender who did his time, relocated into an elderly man and disabled, I believe, put in a nursing home, repeats in the nursing home what he did before. Now, on so many levels, you think, what were they, because his previous rapes, I think, were of elderly women. Why would you put him in a place with elderly women? But they did. Anyway, two things. First of all, what happens to those people if there's no place for them to go, if they're not going to re-offend? And you know, what do we as a society do?
Sometimes they will remain in the facilities, at least speaking for New York State specifically, because everybody does handle it a little different. But one of the facilities that I go into does house the majority of these sex offenders. And often what I hear from them and the stories that I hear is that they are considered undomiciled, so there's no housing that they can find for them.
They're untouchable.
Which means they will stay in the facility until they can secure housing in the community, which is very difficult. It is certainly not easy to obtain housing, and the stories such as what you shared, and they understand.
Makes it harder.
But they do have to sit in the facilities until adequate housing is obtained.
I think this really goes to what we wanted to ask you and what we've been talking about, and that is this. The recidivism rate is obviously very high meaning repeat. They're going to repeat the crime in certain crimes, and sex offense is one. And I think it's been proven, right? It's very hard to rehabilitate a sex offender.
Right.
And Mercedes and I were talking before, and we wanted to ask you, can anybody? Obviously, anybody can't be rehabilitated because statistics have proven, like on sex offenders, that they can't. But other than that, do you feel that everybody can be rehabilitated with the proper background or education or psychological help and so forth?
Well, I think, one thing I want to touch on, because you mentioned the recidivism rate, and that, for some people don't know what that means, and that is just the rate in which one goes back into the system.
Repeats their crime.
Correct. Well,
or some other crime.
Well, not necessarily, and that's the thing when we look at recidivism, often it's broken down, and what I see is an extremely small subset actually committing a new crime or a crime. What they're doing is violating the terms of their parole or probation, and that could be that you're coming late for curfew, you didn't follow through with a program that you were asked to go through, and so the violation rate is extremely high, and that rate is directly tied to not a new crime, but violating the terms of your parole or probation. And so it's very important that we understand that very small subset actually commit another crime in the grand scheme of it all. And going back to that rehabilitation concept, I personally, yes, believe that everybody has that ability, but I can't make that happen for you.
Yeah.
You have to believe that you have that ability.
Yeah,
and so I say that, it's what I say to the men, which is who I primarily see on a regular basis, is I can, till I'm blue in the face, tell you what you need to do, how you need to do it, where you should go. I can get you interviews. You're the one that has to own it in the end. And if you don't do that, it won't happen.
Right.
Well, on the employment issue, so many people that you're dealing with have never worked a day in their life. I'm sure it's a question, but I think they haven't. Or if they have, so they don't have the skill, not just the skills, but they don't know you have to get up at a certain time and be there
when
at a certain time.
When you say they've never worked, you mean because they started in the system as juveniles? Is that what you're saying, or?
Often that does happen. You do hear quite a few patterns of that, and I don't believe necessarily that that system is really set up to break
that cycle from continuing. Thank you, from continuing. Absolutely, and you know, it is a misconception. I go into the holding center and I talk to youth. They're 16 to 18 years old, and they're in the holding center right now. They don't have necessarily a felony charge. They're not in the state system yet. Those are very different worlds. But what they know is the juvenile court system, and they know going to the juvenile detention centers, and they don't fear it. The state system is not the same. And so we're teaching them that they can handle, if you will, what it's like to be in jail or incarcerated.
Which is horrible.
But the state system's a whole other world. Right. It's very different. And so it's a misconception that these youth don't understand when they're going through, because they're in that age where you feel like you're invincible.
Yeah,
Right?
Tell us about the communities, how they regard what you're doing. In other words, don't you think a lot of people are watching this program now and saying, what are they wasting all this time and money doing that for? I mean, we have, you know, people need food, we need new roads, people that are working can't afford health care. Why are we spending money, time, and effort on helping criminals?
That is an absolutely fantastic question, and I have multiple answers for those people. The first one is that we're dealing with people, right? Person first. So if that doesn't draw you in and you can't see the person behind it, then let's talk about your pocket and the money. Because the fact of the matter is, this person is going into a facility every time they violate, and we as taxpayers are paying for them to stay there at the tune of about $60,000 a year per person when they go into a facility. Wow. They come out and we have not done them service to get them acclimated, so they're going to go on to social services. Well, we are paying for that also. And then their cycle continues and they go back into the facility. So we will forever take care of that person. Why wouldn't we make them law-abiding, tax-paying citizens of our community?
Able to take care of themselves.
Absolutely. So
and be productive members of
there
society.
You go.
Instead of a drain on society.
Exactly. And so it's you don't have to like the person, but at the end of the day, it impacts you whether you like it or not.
Absolutely. That's a really good way to put it.
It's an excellent way to put it, because so many people look at it exactly what the judge said. You know, like, why are we helping those individuals? And at the end of the day, they're our person first, and they have family, they have people that care about them, and sometimes they just need the necessary support to get there.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Absolutely.
You are awesome for what you do.
Amazing.
You are so awesome
I love
for what you do.
Now, I'm sure people bring this up to you all the time, that it seems like in our country we have more people incarcerated and than in other countries.
Absolutely.
And why is this, and does this affect what you're doing?
It most certainly does. There's no shortage of people incarcerated at this point. In the U.S., we have 2.2 million incarcerated behind bars.
Become like more of a business.
It has become a business, but you know, there's a business in poverty in general, right? There is a business in poverty. That's why this particular cycle continues, and individuals stay in that cycle. And prison is part of that. It's a subset of that system. And yeah, absolutely, it is a business.
Because I think we even mentioned about it, privately owned prisons.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Not a fan.
Business, yeah.
No.
Not a fan of that whatsoever.
Why? Tell us.
I wish we had more time for her to tell us.
We're going to get the
But we
deets
have to go,
afterwards.
folks. Cindy, thank you. Thank you for coming
Absolutely.
to educate us on such a hot topic, and thank you for all that you do in our community. We will be right back with some final thoughts. Welcome back to Daily Buzz 716. We actually got Cindy to stay with us for our last segment, and we would love for you to answer. Yes, quickly. Love for you to quickly answer Mary's question.
So the question was about private prisons and my personal thoughts on them. And I personally, and again, this is my opinion, do not like private prisons or the concept of them. It's bad enough that there's a business of poverty, but we are making money off of these individuals' misguided behavior or whatever that they chose to do by putting them in these private prisons, and they're also not as regulated, despite what one may hear and or read.
And probably the people are not as well trained.
No.
That work.
The staff.
No, because it is absolutely a
Right.
business.
Yeah. Wow. Well,
It's a
thank you for
business
answering that.
Absolutely.
Tell us really quickly, what's next for Peaceprints?
Yeah, we have lots of things going on. So our annual dinner is coming up at the end of April, April 28th. That's fun. Always
Great
a
steak,
blast.
great steak.
Great steak at the annual dinner. Reason why you should be there.
You need to be there.
Absolutely. But on top of that, we've got some new initiatives which we'll be sharing at that point. And we are partnering with Houghton College and we'll be opening an associate's degree program for folks with criminal
That's
convictions. That is, yeah, it's really exciting, right? Because that's one of the huge barriers that our folks contend with on a regular basis. So that will be coming very, very soon, and we are kind of moving forward with that at this point. And we'll leave it at that.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you so much. We truly hope that all of you learned some things today. If you'd like to learn more about the important work being done by Peaceprints, or if you want to volunteer, please visit their website at peaceprintswesternnewyork.org. Thanks for being with us today. If you'd like to join our audience here at Daily Buzz 716, please visit WBBZ-TV to register. Also, like us on Facebook and Twitter. Thank you for your time. We'll see you tomorrow.